Good morning, everyone. I would like to welcome everyone here in Stranmillis and also to those joining us online to our act of remembrance at Stranmillis University College this morning. We're gathering as governors, chaplain, staff and students to honour and to remember the service and the sacrifice of all of those involved in the two world wars and in more recent conflicts. As we participate in our act of remembrance, we are very mindful of those former Stranmillis students whose names appear on the College War Memorial to my right, and we will hear more about some of their stories later. We also remember all of those from across these islands and beyond, those in the services as well as civilians who have given so much for the freedom and for the peace that we and others enjoy today. The US Army General Douglas MacArthur said, "The soldier, above all others, prays for peace, for it is the soldier who must suffer and bear the deepest wounds and scars of war." So today, as we honour and remember the bravery and the sacrifice of others, let their acts of courage challenge each of us to be committed to peacemaking and reconciliation wherever and whenever possible. I would now like to invite one of our chaplains, the Reverend Gareth Burke, to give a short address.
Good morning. Today is a day of mixed emotions for me. Like you, I have come here to remember and to reflect, to look back and to consider those who gave their lives in the world wars and in other conflicts since then, and to think of those who continue to suffer because of war and violence. But it is a day of personal reflection, because this day, the 11th of November, always reminds me of my father. My father served in the Royal Artillery in the Second World War. He saw action in Crete and in Greece and in the North African desert. And just before the Battle of El Alamein, he was captured. And for the remainder of the war, he spent time in camps in Italy and in Germany. On this day, the 11th of November, he donned his medals. He would make his way to some act of remembrance. And as the years went by and veterans were in short supply, he was often called upon to speak those haunting words of remembrance. They shall not grow old, as we who are left grow old. So this day is for all of us a day of remembrance and reflection, and personally a day that I find quite moving because it reminds me of Dad. We need such days, for we are prone to forget. Isn't that true? You're going out of the house of an evening, you're going to some function or whatever, your wife says, "Don't forget to bring in the milk." And you return a couple of hours later and she looks at you and immediately you realize, "I forgot." Not a serious crisis. A little more serious if you forget her birthday or your anniversary. We are prone to forget. It's very interesting as we look at the Bible and as we go through the Bible, how often we are exhorted to remember. Remember Lot's wife. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Regularly we are exhorted to remember. Why? Because we are prone to forget. It is good to have moments when we pause and remember. Jesus himself was very aware that we often forgot things that are important. So shortly before he died, he gave to his followers, his people, a special meal. We are to eat bread and to drink wine so that we would remember his death on the cross. As those who are followers of Jesus come together to eat bread and drink wine, they are really doing two things. They are remembering his death, remembering his sacrifice on the cross in their place. But they are also giving thanks for the gift of salvation in Jesus Christ, giving thanks that Jesus came from heaven into this world and went to the cross, giving thanks for forgiveness and salvation, remembering and giving thanks. And isn't that exactly what we are doing here today? We are remembering the horror of war, the trenches, Passchendaele, Ypres, Somme, the Holocaust, Hiroshima, Dresden. We're remembering also those who gave their lives and those who suffered and continue to suffer because of war and violence. That suffering takes many forms, doesn't it? In rummaging through some old papers at home recently, I came across a little series of telegrams that had been sent by the Ministry of Defence to my grandmother in 1942. Just to inform you, the first one said that your son is missing, presumed dead. Then about 10 days later, another one, just to inform you, your son is alive, injured. And the third one, 3 weeks later, just to inform you that your son is a prisoner, but is alive and well. Think for a moment of the mental torment and anguish that Magrani must have passed through over those weeks of uncertainty and waiting, and such anguish replicated again and again and again in so many lives and homes. We remember the horror of war. We remember those who died and those who suffered and continue to suffer because of war and violence. But we also today give thanks. We give thanks to God for deliverance in time of war. We are thankful for the freedoms that we have, which includes the freedom to come together in this way here this morning, and thereafter to go about the business of the day and to engage in the activities that we want to engage in. Often we are critical of government and of those who are in authority, but we gather as those who know freedom. We are not under a totalitarian regime. We remember and we give thanks. And I encourage you now, in these moments of silence, to do just that. Remember and give thanks.
Thank you, Reverend Burke. I would now ask everyone to please stand for the remainder of the Act of Remembrance.
This year, we remember Hugh Lamore McGee. Date of birth, the 23rd of May, 1911. He was the son of Edward and Jane McGee of Finnegy. Hugh McGee was a student of Stranmillis from 1929 to 1931 and was a graduate of both. He was a graduate of both Queen's University and Trinity College in Dublin. He was then appointed to a post in Dunmurry Primary School. Hugh McGee joined the RAF Volunteer Reserve and became a flight lieutenant stationed at RAF Feltwell. He died on the 16th of March 1942, aged 30, and was buried in Victoria Cemetery in Carrickfergus. We also remember William McCarroll, who was born on the 24th of June 1918, the son of William John and Minnie McCarroll of Belfast. He was a student at the college from 1937 until the outbreak of World War II. in 1939. He went straight into the RAF Volunteer Reserve and was ultimately promoted to the rank of Flight Lieutenant. The husband of Gwendolyn McCarroll in 1943. The husband of Gwendolyn Mary McCarroll, and was killed in active service in November 1943, somewhere over the Crumitory Firth of the Scottish coast. He is listed on the RAF Memorial in Runnymede near Windsor. We will remember them.
This year we also remember Robert Getgood McCrory, who was born on the 4th of November 1918 in the Portadown area, the son of Robert and Margaret Elizabeth McCrory. He completed his final year in college in the 1937-38 academic year. He was associated with St John's School, Hillsborough, where he taught briefly as a principal before joining the RAF Volunteer Reserve 115 Squadron. He was promoted to the rank of sergeant and was killed over Gemdine, Germany on the 29th of July 1942, aged 23. He is buried in Kiel War Cemetery. We also remember Albert James, or as he was known, Valentine McKee's date of birth on the 18th of April 1911. He was the son of Thomas and Margaret Ann McKee and the husband of Elizabeth McKee of Castle Rock. He trained at Stranmillis from 1929 to 1931 and was then appointed to a post in the Mariners' Church School. Aircraftman McKee joined the RAF Volunteer Reserve and was killed on the 24th of December 1945 in North Africa, aged 34, sadly, after hostilities had ended. He was buried in the Medjes El Bab War Cemetery, 60 kilometres west of Tunis. We will remember that.
We also remember Charles Alexander McNabb, who was born on the 19th of September 1913. He was a student at Stranmillis from 1932 to 1934. Charles also joined the RAF Volunteer Reserve following a teaching career at Elm Grove Primary School in Belfast. He was promoted to the rank of sergeant and died on the 24th of June 1942, aged 29, in unknown circumstances in southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, and he is buried there in the Guru Cemetery. We also remember Frederick James Perry's death, and his date of birth was the 4th of April 1911. His home area was Londonderry, and he completed his teaching training at Stranmillis in the year 1930 to 1931. He then taught in the Irish Street School in Londonderry. He was married to Elizabeth Mary Perry of Killaloe, County Down. He served as a flight lieutenant with 28th Squadron, RAF Volunteer Reserve. He was killed on the 27th of March 1944, aged 33, in Burma. His name is inscribed on the Singapore Memorial, along with the names of over 24,000 other soldiers and airmen of the Commonwealth Forces who have no known grave and who died during operations over the whole of the southern and eastern Asia. The memorial stands in the War Cemetery outside Singapore City.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
for your tomorrow. When you go home, tell them of us, and say, for your tomorrow we gave our today.
This concludes our act of remembrance. Please be seated. So before we go and get some refreshments, and the refreshments are in the Student Union Common Room, and Andrew will hopefully lead us there in a few moments, I would just like to say a sincere thank you to everybody who has been involved in the planning of this morning and also then participating today. So thank you, Reverend Burke, for coming in short notice and giving an address. Thank you to all of our readers and to our musicians. Thank you to all who were involved in the technical side of things and the administrative side as well. And I think this is a very poignant event to hold and one that we do rightly. So thank you very much for coming, and we will be shown the way by Andrew. Thank you.